let us introduce ourselves. Then me, Mufrotul
Aini,
Khat,
and we are from
A class.
And now we are going to discuss about one interesting topic about British literary work, namely poetry, and the title
London 1802
by William Wordsworth.
Check it out.
Check it out. Talking about that poetry, it is one of the poetries that exists and written in the early 80s, exactly around 1802 as the title taken. Then don't you know, guys, that it is such kind of poetry that belongs to romantic period. Thus, we can assume absolutely the language used is in modern English. However, when we try to read and analyze more, we can find an interesting and different thing in that poem on how the poet William Wordsworth still provides some archaic words, and we can prove it by reading in some lines. And for instance, in the first line, we can find though and the in the second line, and in the ninth lines, we can also find they as the example. And as the slight explanation, the archaic word or those words are a second person singular pronouns in English, and it is used for replacing in almost context of view. We can prove it. We can know that it is absolutely used in Northern England and Scotland, and that is become a reason that the poet or William used some archaic word in that poem. Okay, that's all.
Okay, let's move to another topic. Besides archaic words that we can find on that poetry, we also have some words that we can pronounce whether using UK's pronunciation or US pronunciation. I will give 3 examples. The first is apart. When you pronounce it using UK's pronunciation, you have to pronounce apart. While in US pronunciation, you have to pronounce it apart. So the difference on R, in UK's pronunciation you cannot hear R, while in US pronunciation you can hear R. Apart and apart, apart and apart. And the second example is manner. Manner on UK's pronunciation you have to pronounce manner, while in US pronunciation you have to pronounce manner. So the difference on a and a, manner and manner, manner and manner. And the third example is altar. In UK's pronunciation you have to pronounce altar, while in US pronunciation you have to pronounce altar. So altar and altar. Another thing that makes that poetry more beautiful is figurative language. For example, metaphor in the second line, that is, she is a fan of stagnant waters. It is an example of metaphor that can make this poetry more beautiful. That's all.
Hi guys, let's move to the next discussion. It is about the cultural background of this poetry. For beginning this poetry, the author used the word Milton. John Milton is the well-known English poet at 17th century. It can be guessed that this poetry is dedicated for John Milton. And for continuing this poetry, the author said, "Those should be living at this hour." This hour means Wordsworth time, or as the first speaker said, is around 18th century. And the next, he said, England had need of thee. Why the author said so? The answer is in the following line. She is a fan of stagnant water. It means that there is no beauty, there is no movement. In this case is altar, sword, and pen. Altar in this case representative of religion, because as we know that altar usually related to religion aspect, right? And then sword. Sword in this case refers to war. For example, at the time there is Anglo-Spanish War at the end of 17th century until the early 18th century. And while pen in this case refers to literary work at that time, which was deterioration if it is compared with a couple of century before. And for the following lines, there is a request from the author for John Milton. There is give us manners, virtue, freedom, and power. So the author believed that John Milton can rise them up from their pain and their sorrow at that time. So our group think this poetry is really good because it represents the situation and the condition at that time, and also represent the author feeling.